La
As
la 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 da 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 da. Come on, sing along. Hi, everybody.
I,
Hi, welcome to Dragon Congo's Virtual. I'm Lindy Ray, and I'm moderating this panel today. We're going to talk about Lost in Space, but the Netflix show. And we're going to talk about the different plot lines for that show. If you're watching on StreamYard or YouTube, you can put questions and things in the comments. And the best part of doing fan panels when we're all with everyone is that we get to share with the audience. We get to talk with the audience. So we miss that a lot. So if you have a question about Lost in Space, I'm hoping we might get to it today with our 4 panelists. And right now I'm going to introduce them to you, and they're going to tell you a little bit about themselves. We will start with Michael.
Hi, my name is Michael Faulkner. I'm a writer and a podcaster from the Atlanta area. I run the website Creative Criticality, which is at creativecriticality.net. That's where I do, among other things, the Timestamps Project, which is a long-standing look at Doctor Who episode by episode. I started in 2014 with William Hartnell, and I'm now going to finish out 2020 with the end of David Tennant's era. You can find that at creativecriticality.net.
Kevin.
Hi, I'm a longtime panelist with this track, so it's great to be here, even though this is the first Labor Day in many, many years that I'm up here in Massachusetts instead of down there in Atlanta. I'm a podcaster also with the ESO Network. My show is called The Flopcast. Very, very silly, very geeky show that we do every week. And yeah, we are way into all things science fiction and beyond. We had Marta Kristen from the original Lost in Space series. She was on our show a while back, which was a treat for us. So been into the new show, so I'm happy to be here.
Great, thanks. And Nathan?
Yeah, I am the host of the 42 Cast, also a part of the ESO network, and it is your ultimate answer to fandom, geekiness, and everything. And what that means is just we talk about just about any topic that's part of geek media or genre fiction, and it's a different cast every episode. So it's basically like listening to a Dragon Con panel. I'm also the co-host of a new podcast called Time Streams, which is going through Doctor Who from the beginning. And we're on episode 3 now. But if that's your jam, check that out.
Great. Okay. And I am Lindy Ray Keelan. I am a retired podcaster. I was co-host of one of the very first podcasts back in the day for genre called The Skatecast. And Michael was on that podcast with me. We're longtime friends from that. So let's get right to it. I want to first let you know what we know about season 3, because it's always something we're worried about. They haven't started production yet, but Netflix says it's going to be released in 2021, so they better hurry up. And it will be the final season. The showrunners and writers say that he imagined this as a trilogy, a 3-part story. So this is so season 3 will be the 3rd part, and then it's over. It's a pretty expensive show, as you can see when you watch it. But it's really a lot of fun. So I want to talk about that with everybody. And we'll start. First question I want to ask is, what do you like about the show? And Nathan, why don't you start?
Yeah, so I watched the original Lost in Space when I was a kid. It was running on the Family Channel. And so it's something I just kind of stumbled onto. And, it was something that I enjoyed at the time. But obviously there are limitations, both with the age and the audience that they were aiming for at the time, being a little less tech savvy and being a bit younger. I'm usually someone who's very critical of reboots. I think that this reboot has been fantastic. They are aiming it at a modern audience, but yet they've kept, I think, true to the ethic of the original, which is the thing that I don't see a lot in reboots, which I feel like just take certain names of, you know, the show and the characters and completely get like the ethic of the show wrong. Whereas Lost in Space, still a very family-friendly show about this family that's lost in the far reaches of space, but they've modernized it, they've updated it. You know, the family dynamic is different. It's more of a more modern type of family, where it's a blended family, but it's still got that heart of you know, being this show about how this family comes together against all this adversity, and I just really enjoy that. I think that it's a great to have this sort of positive, you know, show, you know, in our lives right now.
Oh, great. Kevin, how about you?
Yeah, pretty much what Nathan said. I absolutely agree. Yeah, and also, you know, I'm an old school fan from watching the reruns of the original series back in when I was a kid a million years ago. And yeah, and people look back at the 1960s Lost in Space and like it's a joke. You know, people kind of it's a punchline. It's, oh, giant vegetable people, haha. And yeah, that's what it turned into eventually as it went along. But yeah, as Nathan said, there was the heart of that show was that this was a family, and you got those family moments and those family relationships, and you know that there was like a special, they'd cue a certain musical cue that we're entering a warm family moment now on Lost in Space back in the day. So yeah, now we have a modern show that was done with care, a smart show, but keeping that intact, that you still get those family dynamics. So anytime you get, you know, so much quality TV these days, you know, what a golden age of just smart quality TV we're in right now. So this is another example of that, but with that tie to kind of a goofy 60s show, I think that they've walked that line, that it's respectful of the original, but they're giving us the quality that people expect today.
That's great. Michael.
I'm going to stick with the same theme. People know my story about Lost in Space. It was one of my first sci-fi shows. My dad would show it to me. I think it was Sunday mornings on our local, you know, Fox affiliate in Salt Lake City, and it was back to back with Star Trek: The Original Series. So I caught, you know, both Star Trek and Lost in Space together, and it was a taste of his childhood brought to me. And like, again, the family theme about, you know, this is a family who's been picked or, you know, or been selected to be cast into space to go to this new place, and they get lost along the way and they have to bond together. And like Nathan was saying, they've done a wonderful job in updating that theme by bringing us tales of, you know, of divorce, of separation from military service, of blended families with adoption, you know, all that kind of stuff that goes into modern era to modernize it and bring it so people are interested now. But also on top of that, as I rewatched season 2 coming into this panel, I was also reminded that they do a lot of problem solving, not by brute force, not by whipping out a gun, you know, and solving their problems with violence. There is some of that, but a lot of it is intellect. It's problem solving. It's teamwork, and that's desperately something that we need in science fiction now to portray to people that there's more than one way to solve a problem. And I think they've done a wonderful job of maintaining that theme throughout the 2 seasons we've seen so far.
Well, that's great. I totally agree. And even though my kids are grown, I do agree this is a very family-friendly show, and you could watch it with your preteen kids. Much younger than, it might be a little too scary. And it's something you can watch and talk about. And yeah, the family dynamic and having respect for everybody. And I also like that it is more science fiction-y. It's not camp. It's science fiction. And the other thing that I like is that the characters have growth. They learn from their mistakes. They are not always the same note. They grow. And on that, we're going to talk about some of our favorite characters. And thinking about who your favorite characters might be, Kevin, who can you name a couple?
Well, this might be the easy, obvious choice, and I see there's already a comment has come in. What do you think of Parker Posey as Dr. Smith? And yeah, Parker is running away with this show. Just it's the juiciest part, obviously, and she is just nailing it.
Yeah. I am not sure if they've quite figured out what to do with her yet personally, because she seems to change a lot, and in 1 second, especially like with the murder of that security guard. On the one hand, she murders him and she seems pretty cold-blooded about things. And then on the other hand, she cannot deal at all with the daughter. And it doesn't track with me quite. I'm not sure if they quite figured out what to do with her about that.
Yeah,
But
it's tricky because I mean, Dr.
yeah,
Smith is a monster. She's done horrible, horrible
yeah,
things. And even, Jonathan Harris, original 60 series, did horrible, horrible things, especially, early on. Yeah, he was a murderer in the pilot of the original series. And yet that's part of the dynamic of Lost in Space is you need your Dr. Smith. And so how do we keep her in the show being as horrible as she is, and with the Robinsons knowing as horrible as she is? So that's a challenge for the writers to keep her in the mix, but at the same time have it make sense. Because on the old show, it didn't make sense. It was like, if we didn't have Dr. Smith with us, we would have been rescued like 18 times by now. He ruined their chance to get home every week on the old show.
Yeah, he's just kind of like Gilligan on the old show. Right?
yeah, evil Gilligan.
Yeah. But what about, there seems to be a lot of, one of the other things that I like about this is there are a lot of strong women characters who are in places of positions of authority, like the captain of the Resolute, and the biggest one, of course, being Maureen Robinson, who is the captain of the Jupiter 2. Not her husband, the Navy SEAL, retired Navy SEAL, but she is the captain and she is the engineer. So what are your thoughts on that? Michael, do you have anything on that or anything else?
Oh yeah, I absolutely love that. It's placing, it's kind of flipping that script that we saw from the 1960s where, men were always in charge, men had all the right answers, and it's not shoving it in our face and waving the flag like, hey, we're doing this. It's very natural. She's been selected as the captain. Her daughters, are also contributing where they can. And that, that leads me to one of my favorite characters from this season. Everyone in the Robinson family seems to have a place except for Penny. And she, that whole arc of that was her finding her place this time around. Judy's doing the medical stuff. Will's out there looking for the robot and making that connection with the robot. And obviously the parents are being the leaders that they can be and working on their relationship, which is magnificent. But, Penny, you could see from the very first episode when they bring the book out that she had been writing kind of covertly, and Will presents it as, hey, this has been our adventure so far. And she's very embarrassed about it, but she starts to get kind of the love from everybody that, you have a place with that. And then she starts building into, okay, well, what do I do with this family? And by the end, she's actually kind of built herself into a little niche of, being able to help out. It shows that everyone has a place. And I really enjoyed her journey this season.
Yeah, it was great. Nathan, do you have any thoughts about your favorite character?
Yeah, well, first off, I was just shocked that Kevin didn't pick Debbie, but
Can I change my answer? Good point. I'm going to go with Debbie.
I'm hoping for a Debbie POV episode in season 3, but anyway.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, I mean, Michael took a lot of the things that I wanted to talk about, because if you watch the original show, Penny and Judy are basically just window dressing. I mean, like, Judy's there to be the love interest for Dawn, and that's pretty much it. She doesn't really contribute anything much on her own. And Penny's another kid and sometimes gets lumped in with Will with like the kid quote unquote storylines. But like also Penny doesn't get, Will's the boy genius, and the dad is, the captain and also the man of action, and Dawn's there sort of a supporting person, and Dr. Smith's there to get them in trouble. That's the roles. This show has done a fantastic job diversifying everything so that everybody gets their thing. Not only is Maureen the captain, she's also a physicist. She does the science. So, she's got like a very big, important role. The dad's still there to be like sort of the protector, the man of action, that kind of role is there for him. And, Judy's the doctor, Will's sort of the robot whisperer, and you know, even Dr. Smith, we talked about how, like in the original show, Dr. Smith just got everybody into trouble and, you know, like ruined things for them. But in this season, we saw once they realized the kind of person Dr. Smith is, how they kind of worked with her to do like the schmoozing and things with the people on the Resolute to like get things going their way. Now, it didn't always work out that way, and the dad kind of misunderstood some things that were happening. But, you know, but at least there is a use there. There's a skill she brings to them that can be helpful under the right circumstances. And yeah, with Penny, you know, sort of learning that she, you know, kind of has this, you know, role where she can be the sort of the emotional center and sort of be like the person that helps, you know, to connect and you know, understands people very well. You know, I thought that was great. So that I love the fact that they've given everybody something to do. And so that was, you know, I think a great addition with this version.
Well, actually, we have to give credit where it's due to the much maligned 1998 movie version of Lost in Space, because Judy was the doctor of the crew. You know, Heather Graham as Judy Robinson was the doctor in the movie. And I'm glad that they carried that over to this version.
I didn't remember that. That's great. And we have a question asking if anybody wants to expand a little bit about Judy as the medic, and you know, what a great character that has become, and what a strong person she is for a 19-year-old to be thrust into all these emergencies like this.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite relationships from this season, because, you know, between Judy and John Robinson, you know, they had a kind of fractured relationship. And then in the episode where he falls into the well and he's been impaled, and she's got to basically run that distance to go save him. And it's reflecting back on their life together, where they had a strong relationship, and then they were separated from each other. And when they came back, there was something missing in there. And this is helping to heal those wounds. And it's about the same time when she would be heading off to college or whatever. So she's in that crux in her life where she's trying to identify who she really is and figure out what she wants to do with herself in life. And, you know, that whole thing together, it started bringing tears to my eyes of seeing, you know, a father and daughter really coming back together and building a lot of the stepping stones we see leading into the finale, where they find, you know, her birth father's ship floating out in the cosmos. You know, it was really building up a lot of, you know, what does it mean to be in this relationship? You know, is it possible to salvage family relationships? You know, is family really important? The answer is yes. You know, and you're able to go find a definition for yourself and come back and still have those anchors to come back to that are a safe haven. And it was very well done.
The Judy's biological father, that storyline, I'm assuming, was born out of their attempt to diversify the cast. You know, because that's the way, by having a biological father for Judy, that gave us a little bit of racial diversity. You know, go back to the 60s, it's just a big pile of white people. You know, so I love that they found a way to not just, it's easy to round out the supporting cast with various races, and that's terrific. But yeah, to into the family itself to get some diversity is great. And now we're getting, but by going back to, the relationship that Judy has with John, and also that leading into season 3, it looks like we're definitely going to explore that a bit more with her biological father. And that's a storyline that probably wouldn't exist, you know, that was born out of that attempt to diversify the cast. So I think that's terrific.
Yeah, it is my understanding they are looking to cast her father. So there's somebody on that ship that they saw. Oh, by the way, this is not a spoiler-free panel. We're going to talk about everything. But it looks like they are looking to cast him, or they've cast him already. So that's coming. I'm going to read a couple comments before we go on here. Facebook user, agree, this reboot is fantastic. And another user, I enjoyed John, Penny, and Will the most. Yeah. And Donna says, like Nathan, I grew up with the original series, and I'm not a fan of reboots, but this series gets it right. I think we all agree with that. And somebody said they cried during that episode. I think it's the episode where Judy goes to save her dad. Yep. And then next question is, what do you think of the reimagined Don and his backstory? And I was going to, it's interesting you asked that, because of all the characters, Don West is, I think, my favorite because I love smart remarks, and he sure has. And talking to his girlfriend Debbie is just like the best, as you know. And speaking of cast diversity, there's another member of the cast who is not Lily White. He does seem to have a criminal background, like he was not a good guy. And but I see that there's a little bit of a difference between him and Dr. Smith, is where his heart at some point we're pretty sure is always going to be in the right place. Dr. Smith seems so unpredictable, but he seems to be someone who you can rely on, and will come and has done it a couple times this season alone, will just be there to rescue you and make sure that you're okay. This is his family too. He's adopted the Robinsons as his family as well, even though he wasn't originally part of the Jupiter 2.
Yeah, I mean, it's Han Solo. It's the lovable rogue with the sketchy past, a little bit of smuggling in space on the side, but a good guy overall. It's that kind of thing. I think it works.
Yeah, there's a huge gulf between murder and smuggling, I think. So I mean, he was willing to cross a certain line, but that was just to like get a little extra money, whatever. Like we would consider that a much lesser, thing than Dr. Smith just murdering people. So yeah.
But speaking of evil, I don't really understand the whole point, the Hastings character. And I wanted to talk just a little bit because he seems to be the actual villain of the story here. And his actions, as of course you need to have a plot device, you need to have things happen, but his action to sabotage the Resolute made no sense to me whatsoever. And so if anybody would like to speak about the character of Hastings and what's up with that. And
yeah, he seems like a pure and simple bureaucrat who really is concerned about just the bottom line. Like, hey, my job is to get this ship to Alpha Centauri, so I'm going to do that. And if we lose some people along the way, oh well, because I want to look good on me that I made this ship get to Alpha Centauri. And he is quite despicable in that regard, because he is one of the villains that truly believes he's in the right. He believes in his course of action, hell or high water, regardless of anything else that happens. I want to make this happen. And so I enjoyed the kind of smarminess that it was in there. I was, part of me was a little upset that he gets away at the end. He gets away on the lifeboats. But he seems like a good villain for me.
Yeah, it's a good point, Nathan. I like that you said he doesn't think of himself as evil, because that's the old-fashioned cartoony bad guy.
Wow.
Yeah. Look at that. Look at Michael twirling that imaginary mustache. Evil for evil's sake. My name is Dr. Evil, or well, I'm a member of the Legion of Doom. So what do you want? Most people don't think of themselves as evil, and so to get into their motivations and try to understand why they're doing what they're doing, and it's not just to take over the world or to get rich or whatever. People have other more nuanced motivations, and so I think that's what makes, especially in a smart show like this, that's what you need for a successful antagonist.
Yeah, I mean, there's also some undertones here of like regarding the robots as being property and not as being living beings, and like we've got to make these things work for us because they've got this technology that can help us out, all that kind of stuff. So there's that aspect of it too, that he's someone that's does not care about the ethics of that situation at all. He's just going to exploit them.
Yeah, it's like the issue of enslavement versus cooperation, and yeah, definitely. And now I want to move on a little bit to relationships, because we've talked about a whole lot of characters, but there's a relationship that we have not talked about yet, and it's like the most famous, legendary, long-standing relationship, one of them in sci-fi, and that's the robot and Will Robinson. And what is your favorite part about that relationship? Who would like to go on that one?
I'll run with that one because
Okay, great,
the interesting thing about the robot and how they've done it in this version is that the robot isn't something that the humans created. And so because it's an alien robot that we don't really understand, it gives a lot more dynamic to that relationship, because in the original show, like, the robot is just basically like a mascot slash pet slash, it's a thing they completely understand. It'll just do what they need it to do, except when Dr. Smith is fiddling with its programming. But in general, it just did whatever they wanted to. And in this, it has its own motivations, and you have to sort of intuit from how it reacts why it's doing the things that it does. They know that it wants to protect Will. They know that it, regards Will, as a friend. But then in this season, when it sees how its friend has been mistreated, the other robot, then it's sort of like it hurts that relationship, and it starts, reacting differently to humans in general and everything. So I really like that. And I like how it's more of an exploration and discovery in the show than just like, hey, this is my robot that follows me around and does whatever I tell it to do.
yeah.
I like how they hung a lampshade on it too, but the dynamic of how season 1 the robot followed Will around like a puppy, learning things, and this season it's actually taking charge and it's doing things instead of just following behind. It's leading from the front, and I've really enjoyed seeing that. And it also kind of makes me think, we, from the perspective of the colonists, we're seeing that this robot horde that's coming in is evil and they're murderers and they want to destroy. And then you look at it from the robot's perspective and it's, well, no, wait, what have they been going after this entire time? Well, they've just been hunting the drive. All they want is their drive back. It's almost like it's really super important to them. Like it's almost like an egg or something, like it could be something along those lines. And all they want is to take that back and get it to safety. And it's a hallmark of good science fiction, of good storytelling, where it makes you think, are these the villains? Am I rooting for the wrong people here? And all of that is born from watching the robot's evolution over 2 years.
Exactly. Yes. Kevin, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I mean, the Will robot relationship obviously goes back to the 60s, and they had that close special friendship and relationship, and they've amped that up for this show, in that now they're really getting into on this deep level that we don't even understand how they're connected. And a good chunk of season 2, they're separate. With the robot's not even with Will, and yet you still feel, that connection. So that's impressive that they were able to have that line going through this season in which they were largely separated for so long.
Yeah, when Mike was talking about the robots and it's hard to say whether they're good or evil. You start to wonder if they're following their own kind of prime directive, which is that the humans are not supposed to be having that technology. And in fact, the first season, it pretty much was a secret, and it still might be a secret for many of the people who are on the Resolute. There are only a select few people who really understand how the ship is getting to where it's supposed to go, or not getting there. And it could be that the robots are just following this technology does not belong in the hands of the humans. And but killing the humans might not be a good idea. I liked that the robot started to identify other humans as friends, and started to say people's names, and is starting to learn the language more. And you could tell that it really does have an effect on the people when the robot says your name. I think it would have an effect on me for sure.
I really appreciate that they're going for like leaving the robot being alien and difficult to understand, because even though, like you say, it's identifying more people as friends and using more of the human language, it's still not that much. And so we still have to intuit a lot from its actions, which most shows it would be like, within 2 or 3 episodes, we've got a translator or whatever. And we can talk to this thing. But no, they're going with this thing is alien. And so it shouldn't be that easy to understand it.
Yeah. And I know Will Robinson has that emotional connection, and I think he's still understanding what the robot's feeling. but it's a little more subtle this year than it was in the past season, I think. What about the other relationships? Are there any other relationships that you find interesting, Kevin?
What I was just thinking about was not necessarily a relationship, but a way of relating, and that's I was thinking again of Dr. Smith, her psychological manipulation ability. That when she is dealing with anyone, you can see again. I'm so impressed by what Parker Posey is doing on the series, but even when she's not speaking, you see the wheels turning. You see it in her eyes as far as what can I say next to get this person to think what I want them to think, to do what I want them to do. So like she's relating to everyone around her like on a couple of different levels at all times.
Yeah, I agree. She's been great. Michael, do you have any relationships?
We've laughed about it, and it is used as a punchline in the show. But Dawn and Debbie, it just it makes me laugh, but it also makes me look at Dawn in a different light too. Like we said before, he's a very empathetic character. He's understanding of the realities of both the dangers of space travel and trying to get ahead, and he's willing to use that heart of gold. And Debbie reflects that, where she just is sitting around clucking at him, and he's talking to her like she's speaking to him in a language that he can understand. It does a lot to shed a lot of light on who he is.
It's funny, chickens are funny, and seeing a guy running around on a spaceship with a chicken is inherently funny. But yeah, it's also sweet, and we're seeing a side of Don caring about this pet. And yeah, it's just in the middle of evacuations and emergencies one after another, and he still always makes sure to grab the chicken and bring the chicken along.
Right.
Yeah. I read recently that chickens actually can understand 50 to 100 words and know their names. And so, yeah, who knows? Maybe a chicken that's 300 years from now is even smarter than that.
A more evolved chicken.
More evolved. Exactly. Nathan, do you have a relationship you'd like to talk about?
Well, I mean, there's so many. With this show, you could almost draw a matrix from like every character to every other character, and there's something interesting they've done there. One that just springs to mind, though, is that just like in the original show, where it seemed like Dr. Smith and Will had some sort of a connection, like even though he was the shadiest guy around, it seemed like he did care about Will to some extent. I find the same thing from Parker Posey and the Will in this show. Like, she wants to convince Will, that what she's doing is right a lot. She doesn't play the same games always with Will that she plays with everybody else, and she seems to be a little protective. Now, obviously, she's going to always pick herself if there's ever a question of her or Will, but it seems like as long as everything else is equal, she would like things to go well for Will. And I find that interesting, that this character who is very selfish and very self-centered does care about Will.
Yeah, that's good. I think she just wants that robot back.
Yeah, but Will doesn't always have the robot with him, and I feel like she still acts that way. So
yeah. It's like she is this evil person, but it's almost like she does need to be liked by people, and I see her making that extra effort with Will and also with Penny. It's almost like she feels her best in with the family is with Penny, and Penny, for a while went along with it, but got a little smarter about that and as we went along too. So I want to shift gears a little bit, and I want to talk, this is not a show that you go to for the allegory about the societal ills of today, but there are a few comments that were made, so I wanted to explore those a little bit. The first is about the Resolute, where people say that the Resolute is the last hope of humankind. So what the hesmona happened on planet Earth that everybody has to leave and they're going to Alpha Centauri? And the only thing we see on planet Earth, the flashbacks are the family centered and of the crash landing of the robot spaceship. We all know what's going on planet Earth, but what do you think is happening?
Yeah, so I mean, that's one of the things that I've criticized about the show is like I have absolutely no idea because all the flashbacks, everything always looks great on Earth. I'm like, yeah, they'll show news reports that things are bad, but it's like it always looks like nice weather out and the family's all there at like their house or whatever. I'm like, because what I thought they implied was that when the ship crashed, it like threw a bunch of stuff into the atmosphere. It was going to be like a nuclear winter kind of thing where like the Earth was cooling. I'm not sure if they said that or if I just like thought that they said that, but then it's like I never see any evidence of that in any of the flashbacks, even the ones that are kind of close to when they left. And so I'm like, so is that what's going on or is it something else? And I'm still not clear on exactly what is going on Earth and why they're having to try to evacuate what they consider all like the best people from the planet.
Yeah, I agree. They play it like it's an impact event, and that the Earth is doomed or it's not going to be able to sustain, the billions of lives on it. But they don't explain much about it. And like Nathan, you kind of look at the flashbacks, like doesn't look so bad. Like, what's going on here?
It's a little overcast in the later flashbacks. I will say that you don't see a lot of sun, so. But it's not as compared to like The Expanse, where if you look at the shots from the show The Expanse, that you could see the impact of global warming on the planet and everything and why, but there doesn't really seem to be much going on there. Kevin, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, well, I guess a couple of possibilities. And one is that they had a plan and they didn't want to give away yet what is happening on Earth, and we will get that information. There's a payoff coming in season 3, perhaps, or they may have not been sure what the story was on Earth, and they just intentionally left it open-ended and said, we'll figure it out and retrofit it down the line. So for now, just take your pick. There's no shortage of horrifying scenarios that we can all, I mean, we're kind of living like 6 of them right now.
Yeah, you got that right. So, all right. And then the concept that we touched a little bit on before, I don't know if we need to go any further in it, about the robots and where we're trying to enslave them. And there are some people who feel that, because we're human, we are the superior species and we get to say what the robots are going to do and force them to do it. And not view them as sentient creatures. Any expansion on that? That's about it, huh?
It's kind of a classic theme, and I know that it was brought up earlier in the conversation. But what is life? Is this a tool for me to use, or is this its own living, independent thing that should have rights of its own? And those issues were addressed, on Galactica, which has a lot of similarities in certain ways to this show, and many shows over the years, and movies, and what is life, what constitutes a life. And season 2, man, we're watching robots being tortured, and it's like, what's going on? Is that really a robot at that point, or is this another form of alien life?
And I did enjoy the allegory that they put down in there's the episode after they find the robot and they have to ride the horses back to catch up with Jupiter to get off the planet again. And the robot is teaching the lesson of, okay, well, this bit and bridle is a form of slavery in a sense, and you don't see it because you've grown into it, you're comfortable with it. But to the robot, the horse is enslaved. And then he defends the horse from the stampede, and he actually learns and feels about death, and he maintains the bridle, as he's ready to leave, and he's about to be enslaved by the humans, and it's that bridle that kind of saves his life for the time being. It was very nice symbolism, and it kind of makes you think about, okay, well, we're comfortable with a certain situation. Well, what if we're on the other side of it? What if we think about it slightly differently?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you. I'm going to read some more of the comments that we have now. Margaret says about Dr. Smith that she needs to be liked because it fits her narrative of being misunderstood. That's a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
And got a couple questions asking, what do you think of the science in our science fiction show? Is it realistic? What do you guys think? How about I'm going to start with Mike on this, being our I know he's a scientist.
Yeah, I think it's fairly believable. I don't know how much research they've done into it in the writing. I haven't dug that deep into the production aspect of it, but I feel like it makes enough sense. When they have the whole ammonia heist that they do on the gas planet. When they walk you through it, it makes sense, and it's actually exciting to me to see like Maureen Robinson, where they, at first her colleagues are saying that she's just off in a different world and not even listening to them as she's thinking things through. And then as they're having the discussion about the mutiny on on that one Jupiter, she stands up and like, I have to collect my thoughts, and walks away. And that's her processing it. And she comes up with this elaborate plan that will actually save everybody. And so I don't know how accurate everything is, but I admire the fact that they're showcasing problem solving by science, as one of the ways to get through the problem instead of just beating their way through it with a rock.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it passes what I call the smell test. So like the reason why we think a lot of 60s sci-fi is very hokey is because at the time the audience that they were writing for had less of an understanding of, astrophysics and stuff like that. And so, they could get away with a lot more. And so I always say that you have to write for sort of like the base level of the audience. And so I think that Lost in Space is getting that right. I don't know if they have like, science consultants that are really, really getting deep into it, but at least it's enough that, I have an engineering background. It seems plausible to me, a lot of the things that they, talk about. And so I think that that's good enough.
Yeah, it's good enough is definitely the right way to think. Good enough for TV, absolutely. Good enough for if Neil deGrasse Tyson were to walk onto the set, he would no.
Yeah,
no,
you can't please him on anything.
Yeah,
so like,
but,
don't.
Yeah.
I think if the acting and the writing can sell it, then fine. And the acting and the writing is up to that level, and that we are convinced, yes, these are very smart people who know what they're talking about. And so, okay, you buy it.
Mm-hmm. In fact, the acting is what really sold me on this concept in season 1, because Maureen is up in space. She's watching, I think it was a black hole or something out in the distance, and this is a Netflix show. They by definition have no boundaries on what they can use as far as vulgarity or anything else. They choose not to use it, and so the fact that you look in her eyes and see the reflection out there of what she's looking at, and at the end of the episode, it's you realize what she's going to say. That she understands there's a peril there. That sells it to me that they have saved that very powerful moment for that purpose and didn't even drop the F-bomb. It's just like it's implied, and it means they're in danger. Okay, the science is fine.
Yeah. I want to add, Margaret also adds a comment here. It says, we also have the amazing Google at our fingertips, so everyone has a pocket expert. So that's a big part of the, where if you're not sure about something, you could just Google it and find out, is this plausible, or what does the words that they're using mean? I have to do that a lot for a lot of things. And so that's a good point. And I agree that without good acting and writing, the science could be perfect, but if you don't have writers writing good, believable dialogue and actors possessing their characters the way that these people do, I think you got a big mess. And instead of a big mess, we have kind of a fun show. And I always, I laugh. It's not really a lighthearted romp, but it's not as dark as some science fiction shows could be, and I really appreciate that. But the actors and the level of acting, the level of people who they've cast, I think, are excellent in that capacity. So I want to now speculate. We have a few minutes left, and I want to do a little speculation about what we think might be happening next on this show. And Nathan, I'll start with you. Do you have things that you would like to happen next? We're kind of on a cliffhanger here.
Yeah, I think the easiest thing to predict, because it's funny, I'm on a Lost in Space Facebook group, and I am shocked by the number of people that think that Dr. Smith is dead at the end of season 2. Dr. Smith is popping out of that box. I mean, like, it's not even like a question. She's on the ship with the kids. I don't know how she got there, but she got there, because I mean, they even played like a little bit of her theme as they sort of like, passed by the box. So I mean, it's like, yeah, that's happening. I honestly don't know how they're going to tie in the stuff with Judy's dad, with what's going on with them. It's obviously like something that's going to be important, but I don't really know. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised that they're just going with like, this is a trilogy and we're going to end it. And so I'm just looking forward to the ride on this one. I'm trying not to predict too much of what's going to happen there, because so far this show has been a pleasant surprise, and I haven't seen everything coming. And so I kind of want that to continue.
Yeah. Kevin, what about you?
Yeah, I'm also not one to try to predict what's going to happen next, and I kind of got burnt by attempting that as season 2 was starting, because leading into season 2, it was the core 7 were alone, because so much of season 1 was with the larger community, and as an old school Lost in Space fan, that was very different from Lost in Space to have, like, I was like, this is Galactica. If there's a whole community of people together in space, this isn't Lost in Space, this is Galactica. It won me over. I was along, I was like, okay, I get it. It's different. That's fine. So to end season 1 with, now it's Lost in Space. Now we have the 7, not without the robot, but the 7 people are alone. Okay, so season 2, we're going to get a lot more of them alone. But then we didn't. It didn't take long to, now we're back to the big community thing again, which is fine. So I'm really bad at predicting what's going to happen next. But that said, I like the idea of ending a series and having a plan and knowing there's an end coming and being able to prepare for it. So original series in the 60s also was 3 seasons. It had no actual ending to it. They just ran out of episodes, and that was the end. And then Bill Mumy spent decades trying to arrange for a conclusion of some sort. So I love that a show that's this smart and this well crafted and this well planned, that I don't know what they're going to do, but I know that they're planning a conclusion, and so I'm optimistic that it will end well.
Michael.
I'm on this kind of same boat. I don't want to necessarily predict something, because I haven't been able to see where they've been going yet. I'm really enjoying the ride here, but I look at the themes and I wonder, if the adventure itself is really the tale. Maybe, as we talked about, I would like to know more about what's going on Earth, going on with Earth and everything, and maybe there is no Alpha Centauri for them to go to. Maybe it's all a ruse, and they were just set up there by someone like Hastings to try for him to take control, and maybe they're going to get back to Earth at the end and bring back this idea that we can all be one happy community and work things out together and get through our conflicts. I also want to see what is going on with these robots, because like I said before, the murder bots don't seem to really be bad guys. It's they're on this quest to get this one thing that seems rather semi-sentient, this engine, and we don't know why it was on the Christmas star when it hit Earth, except for, was that an accident, or were they trying to find some place to put it? Why is it so important to them? And what does it mean for their survival as a species? And who built those rings that we're seeing there that had all the lightning going on both those planets? One planet is okay, it's a data point. 2 planets, it's not a coincidence. There's something more going on there. Those are things I'd like to explore, but I'm not going to be able to predict how they're going to turn out, because the show, like Kevin said, it has wildly gone beyond anything I could have thought it would do.
It is pretty amazing. I feel like I don't understand how they're going to answer all those questions that all of us have brought up in one more season. What do they have, like 10 or 12 episodes in a season, something like that?
I heard season 3 was only going to be 8, that they were reducing the episode count.
Yeah. So, well, you could tell this is expensive.
Mhm.
And but I mean, it is popular. People watch it and enjoy it. Uh, I would like to see, honestly, I would like to see 2 more seasons, because I think this next season they're going to have to spend a lot of time apart, and everybody's going to have an adventure. The kids are going to have an adventure, probably with, Dr. Smith. And you remember, Dr. Smith has been secretly learning how to fly a Jupiter.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So Judy is the captain, and I think Judy's less inclined to believe Dr. Smith's BS than the other kids, but she does have that way. And then all the parents are desperately going to want to get their kids back. And we don't know what's going on with the ghost ship or not ghost ship. And the robots. It seems like an awful lot to go on to magically end at the end of season 3 with everybody happily on Alpha Centauri. It's a lot to expect in a short number of episodes for that to happen.
And they could leave some of it somewhat open, and maybe they might have it. Well, maybe we could do like a sequel series with this aspect of it. There's always that possibility as well. So they might not wrap everything up completely, and that might be okay.
Yeah, the robots get their own show.
Give them their own show.
And Netflix has been known to change their minds too on things. Like Stranger Things has been kind of back and forth on how many seasons they're going to be getting, and they could say, oh wait, we don't have enough time to wrap this up. Let's go ahead and give you the money for season 4. It could be, anything could happen.
That's true. Yeah, you just don't know at this point. So if you were the showrunner, is there anything that you would like to change in the show? What are the least favorite parts of the show for you, if any? Kevin, do you have? It looks like you're smiling.
Knew you were going to go to me first.
You just had that smile.
I'll just go for the cheap joke and say we need a lot more of Debbie the Space Chicken.
Debbie POV episode.
Yes, that's your spin-off series, Debbie.
It's hard for me to do that because I don't want to say it's a perfect series. There is no perfect television series, and you have to remain critical about it. But I have a hard time picking at a nit that I don't see. I do find that the show there is a certain amount of rewatchability to it because I have to go back and I have to unravel what they've done, because they the first time through there was just so much they were throwing at you, but I kind of got lost as to okay, who's doing what and where, what threads are going elsewhere. The Hastings storyline kind of just materialized, and I was like, okay, where did this come from? Watching it another time, it made more sense having that background. So I wonder if there's something they could do to kind of lessen the confusion a little bit and to make it a little more accessible in that regard. But I also hesitate to say that too, because it seems like it's very well crafted in that regard.
The biggest issue that I have with it is everybody, in a lot of respects, they're really good. Like you all have continued to point out about talking things through to solve problems, but so many times they don't do that, and they do things rashly. And like Maureen jumping in the pod without like telling or saying anything to anyone to go rescue, and there's just a lot of things that happen that if you're a good astronaut, you wouldn't make a decision like that, and you just sit there on the couch going, why are you doing this? And I'd like to see a little less of that next time. Nathan, what do you have to add to that?
Yeah, so I guess there are two things. The first thing is what we already discussed. I want more background on what happened with Earth, and I feel like they could have provided that with maybe just a few lines of dialogue, so I don't think it would have really hurt them too much. But unless Kevin's right that it's part of some master plan that they didn't want to reveal it until the 3rd season, in which case we'll see that in the 3rd season, and they'll be like, okay, so there was a reason for that. The other thing is I'm not so sure that I would change it. I mean, I guess again, without knowing where they're going to go in season 3, I find the Dawn, Judy, will they, won't they in season 1 somewhat problematic, and they kind of dropped it in season 2, and I don't know if they're going to revisit it in season 3, but it's kind of like they should have really determined when they cast those characters what they were going to do with them, and it, picked from the beginning a way that they were going to go, because I kind of feel like it was a little weird. And then they kind of were like, okay, we're not doing that. But it's like, okay, well, you should have seen that coming from the beginning and just not done it in the first place. So, yeah.
I mean, there is a big age difference between them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in the original, they seemed a lot closer in age. But
yeah. Judy in the 60s looked like a full-grown woman. Judy on this show looks very. Judy and Penny look practically the same age.
Yeah,
I think the actresses are very close in age.
and that's and bringing that up about why they really do have to get the next season next year is because they are kids, especially Will.
Kids grow fast.
Kids grow fast, and some period of time is going to have taken place because Will's going to get a lot bigger. If no one else does, that Will is definitely, you're going to see a much older looking Will next time.
Sure.
But they don't. It seems too creepy to me. As much as you go, oh, Dawn and Judy, it seems too creepy to me now. And Penny and VJ seem to be more on that romantic relationship track, where they're friends and they're young, so they don't really know what to do with their relationship, and so I think that's a good thing to explore too a little more.
Yeah, it just seems to me that they should have realized when they cast two people of such wildly different ages that hey, this is probably something we don't want. But the first season, it seemed like they were going that way. It was like they had that sort of TV snippy relationship that usually ends up with the two people together, and so I was wondering.
Yeah, they kind of telegraphed that one a little bit.
Yeah.
I have somebody on Facebook says they would like to see more background on the robots for me and understanding their culture and story. That would be good. To have an episode devoted to that would be awesome. You could understand what their motivations are. I think we'd all like to see that. Well, our time together is almost up, and I want to just go around our little grid and see if you have any more final thoughts before we go on. So Nathan, if you have any final words or thoughts you'd like to say you didn't get to say yet?
I guess the other thing I would like to mention is, because we haven't talked about it yet, is that I love the fact that they went with the John Williams theme, a riff on it for the intro song. Yeah, because I was shocked because I thought that, they're going to do something new. And of course, if you've seen the old Lost in Space, there were two themes, and the John Williams one is way, way better than the original one.
I think didn't he do them both?
They're both John Williams.
Oh, are they both John Williams?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're completely different. I love them both, but those are both, or as the credits say, Johnny Williams.
I'm not a big fan of the first one, but that's the second one.
And I'm pretty sure if my husband is watching this right now, he does not want me to sing it again.
The first one was kind of quirky sounding, and then the second one was that more triumphant sound. But I love them both. But both Johnny Williams.
Yeah. Okay.
And I agree though. I love Nathan also that you get that little taste of the second one in the current series theme.
Yeah,
that was a nice touch.
It's got that sort of epic feel to it that's really good for this show. That's sort of the grandeur of the openness of space and everything. And so I think that's really fitting, and I like that they paid homage.
Yeah, and you got a Facebook user who also agrees, saying yes, they updated it really well.
Yep, I let the end credits roll every single time because it just soars.
Yes.
Yeah. Mike?
That was mine. That was my closing thought. Make it stolen.
Kevin, any final words for your?
I think it sounds like we are all like old school Lost in Space fans. I think, and as fans going back to that '60s series, there were so many attempts at a reboot, at a revival over the years, and that they tried to do an animated series at one point in the '70s, and then there were comic book adaptations that were kind of mixed, varying qualities, and the movie had its issues, to say the least. And there's so many attempts over the years, and now this one came along and they did it. They got it right. They did it. So I think it's great that we have this and that we can get together like this and discuss it and look forward to at least a little bit more. And
maybe next year we'll be able to talk in person about it. There you go.
Hey.
Got the robot. Well, I want to thank the three of you, Nathan, Kevin, and Mike, for being here with me today to talk about Lost in Space. I think with all the tries that they did on Lost in Space this time, they really seemed to get it right. It was a really awesome, compelling story, and I'm so glad that Netflix decided to tell it again. I want to remind everybody who's watching this YouTube channel at 3 o'clock Eastern Time. We'll have another live fan panel where they're going to discuss Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist. So I hope the rest of you are enjoying your Dragon Con today, and I want you all to have a great time and see some panels. And we miss you, and we hope to see you next year.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.